Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Tuesday, September 14th meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission. Mary, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Bobby Stopper has an excused absence.
Okay.
So we have Steve Hinnick.
Here. Thank you. All right, thank you very much. I hope everybody's had a chance to take a look at our April 6th and April 27th minutes. It's somewhat ancient history, but I read through them and I saw no objections. Anyone else have any comments on those minutes? All right, I would move that we approve the minutes of our April 6th, 2021 meeting and our April 27th, 2021 minutes. Do I hear a second? John Reardon has seconded. I'll ask the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, our minutes have been approved. Any public comment tonight on anything on the agenda prior to any presentations or what have you? Hearing none, we'll move on into our agenda. This evening we have a presentation from for an elevator design at 321 West Galena, and Ben Lloyd of Henbury Eddy Architects is here. Mary, would you introduce them, please? We have a late member. Please note that Tracy Miller is here. Okay. All right, carrying on. Mary, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mary. My name is Ben Lloyd. I'm an architect with the ComicQ studio of Henbury Eddy Architects. We are based out of Bozeman. I've been practicing architecture for about 30 years. We do all kinds of work. We do schools and residences, commercial buildings, and one of my favorites is historic preservation. And we've done tax credit projects, the Carnegie Library in Bozeman, the Wilson Residences in Bozeman, which is a adaptive reuse, not quite preservation, and many other, the Story Mansion in Bozeman as well as one of our projects. I am happy to be an owner of this building here in Butte, the Manual Arts Building, along with two other partners, Keith Waring, and I bet he'll come in about 5 minutes. Jeff Riggs will come in, ran up the stairs, and he'll come flying in just a minute. The three of us are equal partners in the Manual Arts Building, purchased in March of this year, of 2021. We identified early on some improvements that are required for the building, and historically there was a law firm, I think, on the second floor, and they anecdotally lost clients because they could not get up to the second and third floor because there is no elevator in the building. This is a zero lot line building. There is no space beyond the lot to add on. However, Butte being Butte, I love Butte. We talked to our neighbors, and they are going to, what's the proper, give us an easement for the elevator, a permanent easement, or are they selling it to us?
I think there's a
Discussion.
negotiated
Okay. Fixing the fence. So in this image, you see this is the west facade of the building. That is a zero lot line condition, and they have agreed to let us construct an elevator on the building. The building is 4 stories with a basement and a sub-basement. The sidewalk is slightly below the first floor, and then we have a second, third, and fourth floors. The stairs for the building are along this blank wall that you see. And so as we studied the building for elevator placement, it made sense to retain the integrity of most of the building and use the circulation system that already exists, the stairs essentially landing to landing to landing, which pointed us towards placement of the elevator on the southwest corner of the building, slightly back from the sidewalk. This is an amazing building. It's cast concrete. It's beautiful. I think it was built in a time everyone would agree that craftsmanship and the materials are top-notch. I think since this was constructed, much time has passed, and we have lost the ability to create, for multiple reasons, a matching, sorry?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, the meeting's not streaming, live streaming? Pardon?
It's streaming.
Oh.
That's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, go on.
Okay. So when I looked at design ideas for the elevator shaft itself, which is an additive element, it's very simple. As I indicated, it's on a zero lot line, which really reduces the number of openings, and essentially it's a blank rectangular box that is called for to meet our program. Goes from landing to landing. We, in our office, me in particular, am inspired by Butte. There is two sides to the town, and I'm talking to you guys, and I don't need to because you know all about Butte. But the sort of not fussy industrial side, and then there is this building and many others like it that are very refined. My idea was to recognize the beauty of this building through a very, very simple addition, and to clad that addition in what is known anecdotally as Core 10 steel. It is not corrugated metal. It is not light gauge. It is very clean and of an honest material that addresses, in my mind, the lack of craftsmanship that exists, practically speaking, in today's day and age. So my proposal, and maybe we can switch to the next slide, which is to use this weathering steel. These are some examples of that material, and you've probably seen it before, but in my opinion, it transcends the rusted, which is often the first impression, rusted metal, but through proper detailing, it becomes high design and very simple and of this time. It also, I think, in part reflects the blank wall that we saw earlier, that west wall, and also touches a little bit on the mid-century design of Butte Central High to the east. It's very simple material that I think just has a richness to it and an honesty to it. This image on the left is at Montana State University. It's a recent building for the engineering college. And then churches, commercial buildings, and houses all use this material, I think, successfully. I guess next slide, please. Our idea is to put this very simple Core 10 weathering steel tower detailed with concealed fasteners that lets the building itself shine and doesn't detract from it. I believe it actually respects it highly and fits in appropriately. We've had discussions with others, and I've heard other opinions, and my intent today is to have a discussion with you folks and to get your impressions of this idea. We would come back with a formal proposal later, but I was hoping we could go around the dais and get opinions from you folks and comments on this image.
Well, thank you, Ben, and we appreciate your presentation. Any comments from the commission on this proposed addition to the, you said it was a industrial arts building to begin with?
Manual arts.
Manual arts.
Yes, which was basically high school shop and
I
other
see.
related, yes.
Yeah. Right, another architect actually, I think they owned the building. Wasn't Italo Castori involved in that building at one
Yes.
time? Certainly, yes. Okay, yes, John Reardon.
Thank you. What is the purpose of refurbishing this building? What are you going to do with it? I was involved in a lot of the creation of the inside of the building where it is now with the apartment upstairs. I'm familiar with the owners, Dennis and Bev, the previous owners and all that. And you're right, it's a great old building and all that, and I think everybody in this room wants to establish and keep the integrity of the building. So is this going to be condominiums? Is it going to be apartments? Is it going to be offices? Could you tell us, please? Thank you.
The final use, I think, is still unknown. Right now, commercial on the first floor is what we are intending. We're looking at office or residential use on floors 2 and 3. Floor 4, in its beautiful configuration, is intended to stay. Yep.
Anyone else in the commission? John?
Yes, yeah, I'm very familiar with this building myself. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I'm very familiar with this building myself. I really like it. One of the things with the corrugated metal and everything that I have seen over the years, and I've been kind of turned off on it a little bit there, and the reason why, because we just put a new dorm up at Montana Tech up here. And I'm sure a lot of people think it's great on the inside and everything, but, you know, when I drive by there on the back side there, I go by there every day and that, just about every day. And to me, the building looks like a correction facility. There's nothing there that is architecturally, that, at one time I thought the Hyper building there, where they got the student union building and stuff, was a nice sort of the campus itself, but it does have brick on it and stuff, where I just feel that dorm there at Montana Tech is an eyesore. Just does not fit as far as I'm concerned. And I have seen an awful lot of the buildings in Bozeman with this new type of architecture where they have all the different, and to me, it looks like the lumber yard, they ran out of black material, then they ran out of copper material, then they had some extra ivory material. And I've noticed that in Bozeman a lot, where a lot of these new buildings have this hodgepodge kind of an arrangement, and I just really don't see any beauty in any of it. And I am old school, and I just always loved the Victorian type of stuff. And as far as that particular stuff, we've just recently built a new VA hospital down on the, coming in off the interstate there, on the first interchange coming in off of Butte there. And I was really happy about it when it was going up, and then when I finally seen the final product is, and they did have that, and I was very disappointed with it because, you know, being that this is a VA center, a hospital and everything, they designed that would have looked really nice, like in West Yellowstone, in a tourist location, somewhere where you have it. But to me, it just took away from the professionalism of the VA hospital for what it's intended for. And so when I look at this, and I do notice on this picture here, you do have a brick facade.
This is slide 4 that we were hiding.
Pardon me?
This is slide 4 that we were holding in reserve as something to talk about.
Okay.
So I didn't present this one specifically, but the previous slide is that one is our preferred simple approach.
Sure.
Not corrugated, but
Right. And to me, I mean, and you know, being born and raised in this town, my father's and everybody worked in the mines, to me, that looks like something that's right out of the mine yard.
Yep.
And I've always been kind of, what would you say, in the Uptown Butte, I always kind of like to keep the mine yard and the industrial part separate from the beautiful architecture in Uptown Butte. Recently, I completed a sign for the parking garage on up on Main Street, on Park Street there. And when I designed that, I was into content because what the architect had offered at that time was an industrial-looking sign and a gallows frame on it. And I'm sorry, I'm tired of industrial stuff. And that's why I went back to the letter style and everything I did to make something very timing, that, that would fit into the architecture without any of the industrialization, because I always felt that, like it just says, that you had your industry, and that was all around Butte, but when Butte was in its heyday, I mean, it was a lot of wealth there on the street. And my opinion on this, that right there just really doesn't hit the nail on the head at all.
Thank you, John. And anyone else like to speak to this? Mitzi?
What he said. I think that what I agreed most with is the putting industrial materials in what is a residential slash commercial, but light commercial district. And when you talk about the Catholic high school being on the opposite side and it being mid-century, I think that spoke to it exactly. It's on the opposite side. Everything from the Demolay building all the way to the west are historic buildings with historic materials, and therefore the use of Corten steel is very objectionable to me. And you also used a word that caused me some alarm, and that is weathering. If weathering is weathering like corrugated steel that is down at Casa Grande's, not only no, but the rest of the sentence. So you also said something that was interesting. I don't know where this is going to go. I like brick. I think the two facades, that is the north facade and the west facade, should be brick because that is appropriate for what is in the neighborhood. And the north facade is not seen from the street, and that's a different story. But one of the things you said in your presentation caused me some pause when I saw what you actually put forward as your design, and that was something like, I can't remember, I was thinking just a moment ago, something like added value, or something like with appropriate detailing, I think was the words used. I didn't see any appropriate detailing. I didn't see any detailing at all. And so this is just one more reason why I didn't like the design as it was presented. So my opinion is brick is the only material, but if that is not something that you would entertain, I think there are other materials besides metal that would be, should be considered. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? John Reardon?
Thank you, Mr. Hennig. In listening to your presentation and all that, I also have to hop on board. We're not here to delegate somewhat and all that, but I think if we allowed this starting of the metal Uptown Butte, I think it might create a deal where once it starts, it's hard to stop. And I think everybody is somewhat agreeable to the fact that we don't want it looking at like the dry at the Stewart Mine. It's a beautiful building. We appreciate your investment. We appreciate your ideas and all that stuff, but I think basically you have to be more creative to make this building tie in with the rest of the neighborhood in Uptown Butte. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. The massing of this structure is fairly simplistic because that's what it calls for.
Right.
And I think we're talking about a cladding issue versus the massing. Obviously, that's the logical selection for the location of the elevator. And is this a hydraulic? Or are you going to do a traction?
Hydraulic.
Hydraulic, yes. And the dimensions on that, do you have any dimensions on that, your tube? Is it essentially what looks probably 7 by 10 or 10 by 7, something like
roughly.
that? Something like that. The roof on this, would that be a built-up roof, or would it be
Small
some sort?
membrane.
Just a what?
Membrane.
A membrane roof, okay, with a little parapet wall or something around it.
Right. On
The
the back.
structure, what is the structure? Would it be steel studs or?
Well, we're looking at several options, and one is actually CLT, cross-laminated timber. Because it comes in and goes up in a day.
I see.
And with today's volatile supply chains, it can be counted on.
Yes.
It's made in Montana.
You know, that we have a couple of buildings uptown that has engaged chimneys that are similar to this. And they've kept with the same. This is a secondary facade of the building.
Yes.
And it's just that it's fairly close to the front facade. You know, it has a tendency of crowding the front facade. The color is fairly consistent with the existing building. However, I think, given the presentation, I don't think we have too many concerns with the utility of the building and the way it's shaping up. But I think the cladding issue is forefront to this commission right now. Okay. So we would certainly consider any other alternatives as a possibility. You are seeking some public funds for this, is that correct?
That's correct.
That's right. That's why you're here. Okay, great. But like I say, I think utility-wise and everything is going to be a great addition to the building, and we would ask you to reconsider maybe an alternative cladding system. That's my comments. Tracy, how about you?
First of all, I apologize for being late. I was held up with a client. Super embarrassing for day one. I think it's beautiful, but I really do like the look, but to me, it does kind of scream modern Bozeman tied in, and it doesn't have that classic look. What year is this building built?
03,
Right,
28.
28, okay.
Sorry.
And are the windows, I'm familiar with this too. I remember it was on the market. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. Are the windows black now, or is
They're-
that your finished look?
They are a dark green right now.
Dark green, right, okay. Yeah, that's my thought on it too, is I do love the look, but it has a very clashed look to it.
Thank you. Anything else on the commission? Yes, Mary.
Well, I really do appreciate your purchase of this building. Rehabilitation is one of my favorite buildings in the Uptown. Of course, I say that about every building that I'm talking about. But, you know my feelings. We've discussed
Yeah.
it before. I mean, I think how I felt has been echoed here tonight. But one thing that really I'm very concerned about that John Reardon spoke to is we approve it here, it's going to be all over the Uptown, and it really adds an industrial character to our very architecturally sophisticated landmark district of late 19th and early 20th century buildings. Our period of significance ends in 1934, and that's something to keep in mind as well. So I know that, I have spoken with the folks at the Historic Preservation Office, both a historic architect and the state preservation officer, and I think they supported this idea that maybe this isn't an appropriate material for our commercial uptown, and I think they did give you some alternative ideas, which I think were usable as well. So we really would love to see this project to come forward, but not with rusty metal.
I appreciate that.
Would you like to have any other comments for us, or how would you like to respond to that?
I just have one question that would be super helpful to us, is like, no rusty metal. What have you approved or is in the realm of approvable between brick and metal that comes to mind? One of the suggestions I received from SHPO was a shingled metal siding, which is another concealed fastener, but it has a texture to it. It's not rusty, but it could be zinc. It could be, I've seen it in copper, which is super expensive. We can't afford that. But there's many versions of a shingled metal, which adds a texture, but it's metal. Stucco comes to mind as a potential, just very plain. Other thoughts from the commission?
Well, there is some rusting metal, some Corten, or however you like it, whichever manufacturer calls it now. There's a fence that was put up on the parking garage that has Corten in it. It did kind of leak all over the sidewalk. I myself have done a couple of installations using it. I am an architect, I'm sorry. But, yeah, you know, I don't want to thwart creativity in our uptown district either. You know, I think a panel system could very well work as well. You know, I think the shingle idea, again, brings a lot of, you were trying to get the simple effect, but with the shingling effect, now you've got another dissimilar material on a fairly benign, low-fired brick secondary facade. Yeah. And that in itself is kind of trying to make it something that might not necessarily be. The stucco idea, I mean, we've done that, it's been done, and probably you could get that in a color that's simpatico with the side there. I know that having a stucco surface is different these days than the old stucco. It's probably an acrylic over foam, if you will, something like that, which, you know, you'd have to have some protection for dinting, you know, things like that. Any other material, like I say, I think what the commission is saying and their opinion is that that because of the proximity to the front of the building, it starts to intrude with the composition of the front building. So having it sort of benign is the best way to go, and I appreciate your attempt to make it benign like that. And maybe, you know, a brick facade, you'd have to have probably some angles going up to off of the structure, because you just can't support, I don't know, is it 5 stories of brick in one shot? You might have an expansion joint or something. Yeah. But the trouble with that, the brick situation, is new brick does not necessarily look the same as the old brick. Right. So trying to find a compatible surface would be, you know, it's a challenge. Yeah. So I hope we've given you a little bit of insight into our thinking. Mary, would you like to close this out?
We will approve thin brick panels.
Okay.
And they've been used quite frequently. And I think you can, you know, with this building, I think you need to be very subtle in the color composition and not have a lot of variegation. But that is something that is, you know, I hear good and not so good, but that's the way it is with everything.
Indeed, and I thank everyone for their comments. I tend, as an architect, to use, I don't want to use synthetic stucco. If I did, it would be real stucco. And brick, if we use brick, it's going to be real brick, which is why I went to the steel, which is an honest material that I think is thoughtful and very clear. It doesn't try to be something it's not, which I think this building deserves an honest material, simple, honest material next to it. And so it will be our challenge to come up with something that is a mix, perhaps, of brick. And that 4th slide that I put up there briefly was an idea where we took that west wall and clad it in brick. But I'm going to guess that the front-facing, the Galena-facing facade is still steel in our proposal, and is probably not okay. I got a pretty strong reaction that just no steel, no matter what you do, just don't. I think that if we detail it properly, that it will become high design and be compatible with the detail that was originally put into the building. I know that it's not going to have, when I say detail, not a bunch of stuff to it. It will be, sometimes the simplest solution is the hardest solution. And that's what I would strive for in the addition that we were contemplating. So I think that, yeah, this was just like, this thing just extruded right out of the building. And then you don't have brick in direct proximity to an old brick. You have that material, and then you're separating it with something of its time built in 2022. That's the idea.
I like that idea. I think the idea of trying to match old brick to new brick is a difficult one. Yeah. And I think that follows with the standards of rehabilitation of the U.S., our governing body. So, any other comments from the commission? The Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation and historic preservation. Thank you. You know, sometimes I have a senior moment. It happens. So Thank you very much for the presentation, and we'll take it under advisement. Thank you. All right, our next agenda item is in our new and old business. We have a demo request, a COA at 121 East Aluminum Street. Mary, would you please run this down for us?
Chairman of the Commission, members of the Commission, Trent Biggers with Town Pump, Big Sky Property Management, here to answer any questions or concerns you might have. I think this is my third time before the Commission on this same matter, and unfortunately, I find myself here again.
Fellow commissioners, anyone have any questions for Mr. Big? We see the house here. Yes, Mitzi, you had a comment for him, or a question.
I'm not going to say anything that I didn't already say before. I object to the demolition, but as part of this, what was the recommendation that Mary made, I have to admit, I guess maybe I didn't read it all the way through, but there's also a consideration as one of the conditions is salvage, and was that included in there? Okay, salvage was included in there. So even with salvage, I continue to object to the demolition, but I just wanted to make sure that that was in there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary, you had a comment.
I did put salvage as a condition, as well as design review on any new construction that would happen within 10 years.
Very well, I would move that we approve the demolition COA for 121 East Aluminum Street with the two provisions that Mary has stated, the salvage rights and anything that you're going to put on there new, we'd kind of like to take a look at it before it's done. So, do I hear a second? John has seconded, John Reardon. Any other comments before the question? Very well. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. One opposed. Very well, and good luck with it.
Thank you much.
All right, moving right along, we have a design review COA at 40 East Broadway Street, the old home of Ready Kilowatt.
So I'm just going to talk about this a little bit. I got excited because I love this project, and but Steve Grober is here tonight from Montana Studios, and I hope we'll speak more. But They have gone to the URA and to SARTA for funds. Can you go to the next slide, please? To take the turquoise panels off of the, what was most recently the Northwest Energy Building, and that was for many years the Montana Power Company building. That metal facade covers up, well, metal and panel facade covers up 4 historic buildings. And then there's another building that is included in the complex, and that's in the photograph on the right. And it wasn't as modified as, it didn't get covered up, but it's had some changes. So if you want to go to the next picture, I just kind of wanted to show what the buildings were historically. I included this in your package. So if you go, we're looking south, basically. I kind of joined 2 photographs together from the 1920s. If you go left to right, the first is the Elwood building, and it has those 2 bay windows. Then there's the Montana Electric building. They sold appliances, and it's a funny reinforced concrete veneer. Then there's the older Beehive building with the beautiful arches. And then what was built in 1911 as the electric company building, and that's the core of the historic electric Montana Power Company building. It was built by Butte Electric, and then 2 years later, most of Montana's electric industry was consolidated into Montana Power, and they moved into, and then that became the Montana Power Building. And then there's another, then there's the Elwood building that's still partially intact today. So if you go to the next photo, I just love the Montana Power Building. It had a, you know, that glazed terracotta tile veneer. It was highly ornate. But there you can see left to right, the Beehive with the arch windows, the Montana Power Company building, and then the Elwood building. The building next to the Elwood building is gone, and then you have the City Hall. So the next, I got carried away with pictures. The next slide, if you could go to that. That's, so when they started this, when Montana Power started it, they had the 3 main buildings at the core, the Montana Power Company building, the Montana Electric Company building, and the Beehive building. And that's what it looked like in 1960. And the Elwood building hadn't been consolidated. And then if you go to the next slide, by the early 1970s, it looked like pretty much like it does today. So Montana Studios, if you want to go to the next slide, has already done some testing to see what is possibly under there. And the photograph on the left is some panels that were removed from the Beehive building. You can see the brick arch. And, oh, no, go back. And the other photograph on your right is the Montana Power Company building, and you can see the glazed terracotta siding, and then on the lower one, and in the upper one, there, I'm sure there was some projecting detail, like a cornice or some other projecting trim that they cut off. So this URA grant that they're seeking in their SARTA grant will be used to remove the metal panels and support structures, and then after that, their architect will do investigations to see what can be done. And so now I'm going to turn it over to you, Steve. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you, Mary, and thank you, Commission. Definitely excited to have an opportunity to come and speak and answer questions, I think is the primary goal of being here today. As Mary indicated, we have received approval from URA and SARTA for funding towards this project. The overall budget is about $150,000, and that is for the, as Mary indicated, the removal of the blue metal and support structures. Unfortunately, the backing behind the blue metal is a material that contains asbestos. And so that's part of the reason why the cost of this is what it is that we have to include abatement in that budget. And our contractor has included that, and that is going to be part of the process. The good news is the type of asbestos that is there is, I think the right term is non-friable or friable or something like that. So the mitigation is mainly the encapsulation and disposal. There's not a lot of, we won't be creating a lot of dust or a lot of asbestos in the atmosphere as a result of the demolition. I think as Mary indicated, one of the things that we are excited about when we removed, so we could do some preliminary exploration, is that, as you saw, a lot of the historic materials are still there. Essentially everything that was flat still seems to be intact and in relatively good shape. Unfortunately, anything that buttressed out was kind of hacked off, as you saw. And so that's really, we have about $40,000 in this budget that's for architectural analysis and recommendations in terms of what we can do going forward. And that'll be the next phase of the project. It'll be the actual restoration. So at this time, we're doing the removal and abatement, and then the next phase will be the actual restoration. So I think at this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Fellow commissioners, any comments? John Weitzel.
Yeah, questions. After this is all removed and everything, once you start getting to the remodeling and stuff, are you guys going to really try to get back to the original materials and everything that they did use at that time? Because I'm sure a lot of them cornices, beautiful cornices and everything got, mutilated and stuff.
Right. And yeah, that is the goal. I don't know if you've seen it. I unfortunately wasn't included in this presentation, but the rendering that Cushing Terrell, our architect, did for the initial proposal, actually when we purchased the building, was going back and looking at historical photographs and doing renderings that kind of brought back as much as we could. The other challenge is the fourth story on the electric building is new construction. And so we also have to figure out a way to incorporate that into the facade going forward. But I think one of the good things that both our contractor and architect have said is that when it comes to some of the more ornate materials that were there, that it is feasible to do that with other types of materials. I'm drawing a blank that was mentioned in the previous discussion, but so I don't think we're going to have to, or we wouldn't be able to afford to go back and create new limestone
Right.
buttresses or some of those types of things, but we can use current materials and still replicate what was there, as much as reasonable and as possible.
Yeah, and I let you do it. But there's one company that I have worked with a little bit. I haven't got a chance to really use them, but it's called WF Norman, and they do historical sheet metal. And they build the cornices, the stamped ceilings, and all and for the facades with all the embellishments with the bells and stuff like you see on the older stuff and that. So, and they do have an interesting catalog, but they do still build all the old cornices that go up across these old buildings and that. Sure. And so when I look in that magazine and I look around Butte, I think a lot of them come from WF Norman, so just food for thought.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and we'll definitely be, looking to sources and suppliers, when we get to that stage. And I think, ultimately, we really try to take a hard look to say, can we leave what is there and still get something back? Because part of the, reason for the purchase of the building is the historic nature, really of all of Uptown Butte, but especially of that block. And from a film production standpoint, there's a lot of value in having that look as historical as possible. And so the bright blue turquoise just really stands out in what's, the rest is a beautiful block and really multiple blocks in that area. And so we, made that determination that there really wasn't a way to leave what is there and still try and get back to something that, would fit in with the rest of the area. So it's an expensive, process, but it's something we're committed to doing and definitely bringing it back as much as possible.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
There's a lot of stonework on the building as well, on the first floor, with a lot of, you've got storefronts there, aluminum storefronts, et cetera. Those, I assume, will stay after this, when you take down the curtain wall portion of the building. Are you going to continue to keep the stone down below?
Initially, we're going to leave the stone in place, the polished granite that's there. And I think, ultimately, once we get the metal facade off and can really, analyze what is there, and then do a study in terms of, as we build back, what is appropriate to remain or what may come off. I think our goal is that we would like to remove a significant amount of that polished granite, again, to get it back to what was there. The concern with that is, depending on how it was attached, what are we left with when we take that off? And we really can't tell that until we, expose some of those upper areas and can do further analysis there.
Well, my biggest fear is you get there and it's like, uh-oh, what are we going to do? And then we're stuck with a bunch of crappy-looking old facades. No offense, Mitzi, okay?
No, I understand
No
that, and I think
offense.
that's part of why we're not taking the granite
Yeah.
off at this
Right.
stage.
But I mean, we've done this with the Exerdance building uptown. It's been a mess for 10 years. I mean, it's kind of a disgrace, and we don't want that boarded up look. The windows, okay, what are you going to do with the windows when you take this off? Are they intact, the old windows, or are they new? They're new, aren't they?
Go ahead.
Can I say something about the windows? To me, when I looked at it, it seems like a lot of the windows are in their original window locations. They are replacement windows, but it's like you'll still have the if you go back a little more. So if you look at all the, or maybe one with I guess I don't have one with the historic.
There.
Yeah, you can see that pattern in there.
Right.
And it's like they didn't punch new windows in, openings in. So the old ones probably are partially infilled. I mean, you're going to have to put new windows in, probably.
Yeah, as part of the demolition, we're not going to take the windows out. We're obviously trying to keep the building secure
Yeah.
and weather tight. But again, that's because as you can see in this picture, I'm going to say on the electric building, the windows are not as recessed as far as they are what you see with the new facade. And so we think the window location is still intact. And so when we get the turquoise off, that turquoise, there's a 3x3 angle iron about every 8 feet. Horizontally is what that's attached to. And so we think once that's removed, we're going to be back to, as Mary indicated, fairly original window locations, and again, incorporate those back in as much as possible I think with the Montero building that you see there in the Beehive building, those two looks are things that feel fairly confident to be able to get back fairly close to original.
The Elwood building was done by our firm, the facade on it, we put brick on it, and that one maybe, so you were thinking about stripping off the brick there too, is that correct?
So if I...
The Elwood building, of
Yeah,
course.
and we refer to that as the Ranch House building. I think I'm talking about the same one, the building
No,
furthest to
the
the
Elwood,
west.
the Elwood is the one on the eastern part of this.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, wait a minute now. The Elwood building is on the eastern side of this, is that correct? The Elwood? Yes. Like Blues Brothers, the Elwood? Okay.
Yeah,
Like I say,
so
that one's got a brick veneer facade on it.
Yeah,
And
and-
it still has the 4 window openings. They're a little bit different than the original. So what are your plans for that?
Our goal with that building is, again, we're going to remove the turquoise. We would like to bring back the bay window look that was there historically. And I think those windows are fairly small. If you see what's on the Elwood building now, we refer to that as the east building. Yeah, but so the bay window look that you see there on that historic is what, in our renderings, what we're showing the goal is to come back to.
So that would be another phase of this, is that correct? Or are you going to strip that off now?
We'll be removing we want to get rid of all the asbestos-containing materials as part of this phase, so.
No, I meant on the Elwood building
Yeah,
itself.
so there's some turquoise panels on the
Yes.
Elwood building, so we'll be pulling those off as part of this phase as well.
Wow. Any other comments from the commission on this project? John Reardon.
Thank you. I think it's a great, great project you have going here and all that stuff, and I think hopefully things will run well, and basically we'll be back to the older buildings that everybody likes in Butte. Just remember, no tin or metal. Huh?
Mitzi, you had a comment.
It is a very encouraging project, and I think it's expensive and quite ambitious. But years ago, there was a project that I saw that was at Priest Lake in Idaho, and they had taken something that was about as unattractive as this building is, and turned it into, I think it's some kind of hotel or something like that right now. And that just really encouraged me to think that if you think broadly and you think it through to the end, you can have a wonderful project just like the one at Priest Lake. And so I'm optimistic.
Great, thank you.
Mary?
Well, I mean, I am so excited about this project, I can't stand it, because to bring that section of Broadway back to life, I think would be wonderful. But when I sit here and I look at those turquoise panels, it was the material of the period. And the material of the period today is those rusty metal panels. And I don't want our historic uptown covered in rusty metal panels like turquoise panels were put all over in the 1950s and 60s. So
You can blame Jack Corrette for the color. Because
my
that was-
father worked in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers building in downtown Omaha, Nebraska, and it was the same. It was turquoise metal panels, just like that. It was very popular color at the time.
You know, I think we do have a tendency to overlook some mid-century architecture as being historic, and I think some of those considerations are important as well. I believe that just because we have a large historic district doesn't necessarily mean that we can't have anything new. You know, I mean, I guess that's my conundrum here is, you know, how do we go forward with some new architecture if it all has to look like it's done in the 1910s? Now,
Well, I think we have some great examples of things that are compatible with our historic district in form of the new Northwestern building and the Butte Archives. We also have buildings, yes, I agree, I like mid-20th century architecture, but I don't think this building can't be a contributing element of our landmark district because of its mid-20th century thing, and it doesn't have the integrity or the architectural, I don't think it has the architectural significance to be independently eligible under criteria C. We do have buildings like, I think the Prudential Block is an amazing building. We do have mid-20th century buildings that have been recognized when SHPO did their mid-20th century study of buildings throughout various Montana communities. We have several buildings that were noticed in Butte. So I don't think they've been ignored, but I think that the opportunity to take this building, take this streetscape back and make it compatible with our historic district is just a wonderful opportunity for the uptown.
well, thank you, Mary. Do I hear a motion to approve this COA for 40 East Broadway Street? Okay, John, go ahead.
I would like to make the motion to approve this presentation to continue on to the job. I lost the word there, I'm sorry. I'm not with the senior moment. But just to approve the removal, let's go with the removal of the removal of the turquoise or green fabrication scenario for the start of this job. How's that sound?
That sounds good. Do I hear a second? Tracy has indicated she seconded it. Any other comments before the question? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Good luck.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. All right, we have a demo design review for 305 North Alaska Street. Mary, would you give us a brief outline of this project?
So this is the North Orok building, just behind us. Whatever, I can never figure out where I am up here. And as you know, the South Orok building was recently rehabilitated to great preservation standards. A new owner has purchased just the building of the North Orok, which was historically the Orok Annex building. That building has been neglected for many years, and the most dire conditions are at the foundation line at the northwest corner. It is failing, it's slumping down, and so if you want to go, it's the northwest corner that's sinking, it's causing a lot of cracks. If you just want to stay on that slide, that would be great. And recently, a hole has opened up in the brick masonry. It's on this west wall towards the north. It's kind of, you can see it kind of behind the fence in the main photograph, and then I took pictures of it as well. Butte-Silver has tagged this building as dangerous. The new owners are to they have to do emergency repair on that brick that's failing right now. But then they have a proposal in for the URA, and the URA, like with 40 East Broadway, has provided tentative approval contingent on the HPC's approval for this design proportion of this project, but the project would also entail a demolition review. I'm sorry, I got a little things backwards here. So first we have to consider demolition, and what they're proposing to do is to take down the all of the brick masonry and foundation walls on the west facade, and if you want to go to the north, the next photograph, and then the west half of the north facade, which is kind of like in between those center windows there. They're gonna, so they'll do that demolition, and then they're gonna rebuild the foundation with concrete, reinforced concrete. You won't be able to see it from the street level. Those are our daylight basements. There's wells around them, and there is window and door openings on the north, as well as window openings. And then they're gonna rebuild the upper walls. They're gonna have it be wood frame with a brick veneer, so they'll build, a wood frame. It'll be insulated to current building codes, and then they'll put a brick veneer on. They're going to utilize the brick that they're saved from the deconstruction of the original wall, so it'll be the original brick. They're going to use the same mortar that type as it was built with, limestone mortar. It'll be the same texture, color, and composition as the existing mortar. They're going to put on all the window and door openings. Several of them, especially down in the basement, have been blocked, and some on the west side as well. And they're going to reopen those window and door openings. So they'll be the same size. They will have the same brick headers. And the one thing that they want to do is have stone window sills instead of wood. And there's dolomite, or Dick Gibson says it's dolomite, the stone that's on the parapet in the front and the urns in the front. It looks like limestone. It's kind of a pinkish. So they're either going to use dolomite or a limestone for those window sills. And then, so this is just the initial phase, and then they'll be coming back for the new windows and the like.
All right, well, thank you, Mary. Anyone on the commission care to question Mary, or anyone, do they have a representative here or anything?
Well, he was going to call in.
Okay.
He was,
I guess my concern is, not a concern, I just want to make sure that if they do a new wood framework with the brick veneer, that they have the proper ties to the masonry and to the wall, so it's not necessarily detracting from the structure of the building. As far as, trying to match up with all the brick, hopefully they'll have some extra, because, when they tear a building down. But I think it's, now, I guess the other question is, are these do-it-yourselfers, or are they going to hire contractors to do this?
can you hear? Ronnie?
Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry, we got some little feedback there. So we just went over your project. Steve Hennig had questions about who you're going to use to do the reconstruction. Is it going to be, and so I would just like you to talk a little bit about the engineering work that's been done, the plans that you're using, architectural plans, those will have to be approved by building codes, and then your construction team, if you can.
Correct, yeah, no problem. So we're using BMI out of Missoula, Montana, and the guy who is working on the M&M building, and they did the south building as well as the north building structural drawings of the engineers for the project. Everything's been submitted. It was all submitted before they tagged it dangerous, and we're just waiting on a couple drawings for the interior shoring, which is already in place, and we should be issued a permit.
And of course, these facades are not the major front facades. It's an alleyway or a backside and this north side, which are secondary facades. So that was my, thank you. So you've got an engineering firm who's going to do some of the structural design, and then you'll have a mason take it down and put it back up. Okay. Anyone else on the commission have any questions for Mary or the applicant? Mitzi?
Very excited that you have decided to take on this project. And this is only a request, and you do not have to comply with it. But your structural engineer's report that essentially convinced you that this building could be saved, considering its very poor condition, is of a lot of interest to me, and it's interested to the historic preservation community. So I hope at the point at which your project is completed, you would consider sharing that report so that it could be used in the future by preservationists to demonstrate that there are alternatives to demolition when a brick building is in such poor condition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitzi. Case in point, our last one, the last one. Okay. I would move that we approve the demolition design review COA for 305 North Alaska as presented. Do I hear a second? John Weitzel is seconded. Any other discussion on the question? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and great luck with the project. All right. Section 106, an EPA request for consultation on the West Side's operable unit. This is something that Mary would like to explain to us. Go ahead.
Can you go back to my slideshow and then the last slide is, so the EPA is investigating, and they're going to start planning reclamation of hazardous mine waste and features in the West Side soils operable unit, which is in the gulches and west of Tech. And so this is a federal undertaking because the EPA is a federal agency, and so they must comply with Section 106 of the Historic Preservation Act, which requires them first to consider the impact of their property of their undertaking actions on historic properties. And when I say historic properties, I mean properties that are eligible for listing or that are listed in the National Register of Historic Places. And so the first task at hand is to determine if they're going to be impacting historic properties. And then they'll go through a process of considering alternatives to avoid or mitigate impacts. So this is just the initial beginning. So as part of our historic preservation ordinance, the HPC has the opportunity to request to be a consulting party on 106 undertakings in Butte-Silver. So that's our one thing for us to consider. They have written and said they have identified an area of potential effect, and that is the area that is encompassed by that red line, which includes parts of Orfinio and Brown's Gulch and various other things. I hope you looked at it in your package so you got a better idea. It's about 6,000 or so acres. There has been, so that's one thing, is that we want to be consulting parties, that we find the APE, the area of potential effect, as acceptable. And then what they're proposing to do is hire a consultant in this initial phase to do develop historic context and property types that will provide the framework for evaluating the significance or National Register eligibility of properties of sites within this area that may be impacted. They're not going to go out and do a complete archaeological investigation and identify every single site. They're just going to, in the long run, be going to particular sites and mitigating there, and that's what the sites that will be documented and evaluated as to their National Register eligibility. There was some previous investigations done in this area in the early 1990s. They wrote a great historic context, but it really was only up through the 1880s and 90s. It didn't really address some of the mining episodes that occurred later on. This area was a big producer, I believe, of molybdenum and maybe zinc during World War II, and so a lot of there's properties with potential significance associated with those events. So they need to take that historic context up through the historic era. So I guess that is what the HPC, do you want to be a consulting party? And do you agree with the APE, area of potential effect? And do you agree with the studies that initial methodology that they're proposing?
Thank you, Mary. Having driven around that area for years, there's the old Orofino Ice Company. There's still a relevant, a remnant of that facility where they would make ice and sell to Butte. And as far as historical mining operations, the old Bluebird mine, but there's really not much left of any of those structures now. We did do and I don't know if this encompasses the Browns Gulch where we talked about the old schoolhouse up there through the this is not in that area. This is further south and west. I don't know what we could really contribute unless you feel that it's imperative that we indulge ourselves with this.
Yes, I do think it's important for us to consult on this project.
Well, then I guess we should. If you think it's that important. We've done this with these radio towers all over town, the cell towers and stuff, and it's kind of a slam dunk, really. But if the HPO feels that it's an important facet of our commission, and it's not going to take us away from, a lot of rusting metal and things like that, I think we should possibly agree with her. How does the commission feel about this?
This is kind of what I do, looking at the rusty things and the little holes in the ground. So I think it's an opportunity for us to be, as part of a consulting party, to just find out new things about our community. We're the Historic Preservation Commission, and so to find out about things that are out there, and particularly even things that are in poor condition, such as the Bluebird Mill, which I find is very significant. I think it's a great opportunity for us to learn about our community and then to, especially at the mitigation phase, because I'm sure the Bluebird Mill is going to be one of those that is going to be, have some work done, some removal, is to have an input about what we think might be appropriate impact mitigation, whether or not it's preserving part of it or interpretation or whatever it might be. This will be our only opportunity to do that, and so I support the suggestions of our Historic Preservation Officer.
Thank you, Mitzi. Any other commission comments? John Reardon?
Thank you, Mr. Henning. I just wanted to say, I think that what you presented to the commission is worth looking at and researching and all that. I mean, that's a really interesting part, especially with the OBAMP Railroad, you know, with that trail up to Tech and stuff like that. And I think it's important that we look at it and kind of check in and see what's going on. So I'm for that. Thank you.
Very well. I would, yes? If,
Britt lives out
I
there.
don't know.
I'll call him. I think a board member has to do it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, as one of the few residents that live in that area and specifically on Orofino Gulch Road, I would highly recommend and encourage you to please participate in this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I would move that the HPC undertake consultation under our Section 106 requirements for the West Side Soils Operable Unit. Do I hear a second? John Weitzel has made the second. Any other comment or discussion on the question? Therefore, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you for your input, and we'll look forward to looking at the Bluebird Mill. The old Bluebird Bar is closed, and go down to the Bluebird Bar. Okay, our staff or any member have any reports for us tonight? Mary?
I would just like to give you an update on the Basin Creek Caretaker's House Rehabilitation Project. We put a bidding document out. We received 2 bids, and we had the bid opening at council, the last council meeting on September 8th. We were only able to read one of the bids because the other bidder hadn't had time to get their bid bond. They got it the next day, but that was too late for us to read it. The one bid that we received was from a construction firm in Florence, and it was basically $375,000, which was very excessive high. The council voted to refer it back to committee to make a recommendation, and so the committee basically is me, Pat Canine with Public Works, Pat Holland, government building official, and Karen Burns, and we've been discussing it, and we will be making a recommendation to council soon. But in the meantime, the other bid was, all I can say, it was much more reasonable, but I still need more money. You know, material prices have skyrocketed, and so I am going to be applying for a SARTA grant to help make up the difference, and hopefully council will go with our, well, hopefully we'll make a positive recommendation and council will approve that, and then maybe this would go back out to bid, but that's to be seen in the future. But I just wanted to keep you updated on that project.
Any other updates on any current work that's going on? John Reardon?
Thank you, Steve. This evening when I walked in, Steve and I chatted, and I don't know if this is the time and place to bring it up, but I think before the commission or being on this committee and on the commission, everybody followed the Blue Range demolition deal. And I drove by there numerous times and all that stuff, and we had reports that basically the building, the finale was is the building had to go because it wasn't structurally sound. The demolition work looks good and all that, but I guess what I'm saying, and I don't know if I'm being very impatient or whatever, is the fact that there's still a portion of the building left as you look down toward Naranchi Stadium. If you go there, it'd be the southwest entrance. And in the demolition report that basically had a lot of clout is that portion of the building wasn't sound and stable and is still standing as an entrance to the proposed, I guess, expansion of a business's storage facilities, let's put it that way. So I don't know if we should get involved. I don't know if there's any alternatives. Hopefully they will do something with that portion and all that, but I think that the deal, the way it came down, is that they should have to follow through with the commitment they made to the demolition of this facility and complete it altogether. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Mary, you have a comment.
Yeah, that southwest part of the building, it has a frontage on Mercury Street, and it's the west part of the building that has garage doors. And that is part of the warehouse building. It was built at the same time. The warehouse is an L-shaped building that wraps around the south and the west sides of the garage. So they always were going to retain that southwest portion of the building. I can say that Ed Stacks is in talking with us about the facade treatments on what's left of the building, which would include that southwest corner and then, the exposed north and east walls of that warehouse building. And, and because he wants to get a URA grant to do that work, to assist with funding of that work. And so it will be coming to the HPC for design review. So we will have input, a lot of input on that.
Yes, and I think what John was referring to is in that report, they claimed that was one of the, I guess, a failing part of that structure.
Oh, the northwest, excuse me, the northwest, yeah, okay. Yeah, northwest.
But take drive by and you'll see in that report that they read when they wrote up the scenario.
Okay. Make sure that it's
All right, Mitzi has a comment.
Yes, Mary forgot, but September 23rd to the 25th or the 26th, I can't remember if it extends into Sunday, is the Montana History Conference is going to be in Butte, America, which is a great opportunity for us to see presentations on Butte and other Montana subjects. Jennifer is probably going to be working on that as well. And on the 23rd, I don't know what the schedule is, and Mary maybe knows what it is. I don't know if it's in the morning or the afternoon. That's the time when the CLG participants have a meeting. And so Mary every year has invited, or every other year has invited us to attend a CLG meeting so that we could see what other communities are doing with their CLGs. And I think now all the excuses are off the table. I think it's right here in our community. The meeting can't be more than 2 or 3 hours long, and I just think it would be great for us to be represented at the meeting and also for us to meet and see what other people are doing in their communities.
It's an excellent suggestion, Mitzi. As if anyone doesn't know, CLG is a certified local government. And we get $6,000 a year for it, which helps out Mari's salary. It gets her lunch money, which is great. However, no mercy. Well, I think that's great. Now, do we have to sign up for the entire thing to go to this section? Mary?
I apologize. Kate Hampton was very slow and she told us it was going to be the 23rd, but she's been very slow at telling us the time. And she has, and I know it's in the afternoon, and I will get that information to all of you. And you can attend the meeting. You don't have to sign up for the rest of the conference. I am going to be given a tour at the Anselmo as part of one of the, there's a Made in Montana all-day extravaganza, and I'm going to be involved in that. And so I probably will miss the start of the meeting, but I would love it if 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 of the of our group showed up. Usually in the past, what they've done is they've asked each preservation officer to give a presentation on what's gone on in their preservation world in their community in the last year, and then we're not doing that this year though. So, but I'll get you all the information tomorrow.
That'd be excellent. Okay, any public comment on anything on this that wasn't on our agenda this evening? Going once, going twice. Any other comments or announcements from our commission? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.